Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 23rd of March, 2026, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. In the studio, myself, Brian Gerrish, delighted to have Ben Rubin with me. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Brian.
And we're also joined by Diane Rasmussen, who will be giving us a report on Fornethy and the Fornethy lady following the rejection of the appeal into the sentencing of the Fornethy member of staff. We are also delighted today to be joined by Dr. Gary Sidley, retired NHS clinical psychologist, and Gary's going to be making some comment on what's been happening around the meningitis scare. But really the backdrop for today's news, of course, is war, chaos, fear, rumours of more war. It's all about scaring people, and we're going to try and cut through that. But the important thing is today is 6 years to the day since lockdown took place, and we thought there's no better place to start than with the original UK column report on that very day. Let's have a listen. Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 23rd of March, 2020, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish. We're delighted to be joined by David Scott, bringing us northern exposure from north of the border. Are you 3 feet away from me?
Possibly, maybe.
Yes, we're about as far away from each other as we can get here in the studio. Naturally, we want to follow government advice.
Well, let's just have a brief look at the latest statistics. 350,646 cases worldwide of COVID-19. Deaths are up to 15,317, and recoveries up to over the 100,000 mark, so that's 100,354. There are still 234,975 active cases. Of those, 223,727 are classed as mild, and 11,248 are classed as serious or critical. Now, today is a special day in the Houses of Parliament because the emergency coronavirus bill is going through. So if we remember, this is all about containing and slowing the virus, easing legislative and regulatory requirements, enhancing capacity and the flexible deployment of staff across essential services, managing the deceased in a dignified way, and supporting and protecting the public to do the right thing and follow public health advice. It's that last one that's very 1984-like language, but anyway.
Well, there we are, the start of something really serious at the time. And of course, many people deeply affected by it, with some tragedies amongst people who simply couldn't take the pressure. But what is happening today? Well, is meningitis as bigger an issue? Not quite, but we are seeing things which clearly the public should pay attention to. Let's have a look at a couple of reports here. Thank you, Diane, for sending these through. Obviously, we got the BBC. What are the symptoms of meningitis and how is it spread? But we've also got Devon Live on the right there, UK Health and Security Agency, meningitis B update after hundreds queue in Kent for the vaccine. And this is one of the key issues that there's a constant talk about the number of people who've either been vaccinated for meningitis or pressure to get even more people vaccinated. And of course, the outbreak in Kent, a lot of it centred around the universities. So second UK site reports student ill with suspected meningitis, not linked to the Kent outbreak. Now, if this is quite an interesting position. Let's just have a look at a very strange BBC report about meningitis.
The meningitis outbreak in Kent has been described as an unprecedented, explosive super spreader event. But at the same time, we're being told the risk of it spreading nationwide is low and that this isn't another COVID. So how can both things be true? This outbreak is highly unusual. You don't often get such a high concentration of cases at one time. And meningitis doesn't spread super easily. Sitting next to someone on a bus, for example, isn't considered a risk. It normally requires very close contact, such as kissing or sharing drinks or vapes. Only in rare cases do people get seriously ill with blood poisoning and brain inflammation. There's only around 300 to 400 of those cases every year. It's why experts continue to say, even for people in Kent, the risk continues to be very small. Compare that to COVID, when at the peak of the pandemic, there were tens of thousands of infections every day.
So masterful piece of BBC reporting there, which of course you picked up on, Ben. Can these things both be true at the same time? Well, seems a bit wobbly there, but the BBC thinks they can pack them together. Perhaps we'll pull that reporting apart just a moment. But let's have a look at something more factually. This is the NHS overview on meningitis, and of course it's got basic details of symptoms, causes, treatments, complications, and of course vaccination. But it talks about the meningitis outbreak, and what it's actually saying is that the risk of meningitis outside of Kent remains low. If we go to the UK Health Security Agency, meningitis B outbreak, what you need to know. I'll just hopefully scroll through a little bit of this, because you can see there's a lot about meningitis, but you have to get into this report before you can actually see the line where the risk is low. So I'm going to say the style of reporting by this authority is very much to keep on the fear factor. People fearful, get them onto vaccinations, and almost nothing on the fact that the risk is very low. If we get to the statistics on the number of reports of cases, here's the UK Health and Security Agency again, notified cases of invasive meningococcal disease, and here it talks about the actual details, and if we bring those up on screen, 20 confirmed cases, 9 probable cases, and 2 deaths. Now, before we bring our guest on to comment, we're also going to play another historic YouTube UK column clip where we were talking about lockdown and the government's use of applied behavioural psychology through the Behavioural Insights team in order to ramp up fear. Let's have a look at what we said at the time. And the desire to get those vaccines in, and you've just shown, Mike, that they are still after getting Bill Gates vaccines to everybody in the country before we're free. But this is the bit we need to concentrate on, the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergency, SAGE. And what have we got to report? Well, we were given 2 days ago an internal document from SAGE, and let's have a look at what it is talking about. It's dated the 26th of March 2020. The headline is Options for Increasing Adherence to Social Distancing Measures. Question to be addressed, what are the options for increasing that adherence? The paper addresses 2 distancing measures, general social distancing by everyone and shielding vulnerable people for at least 12 weeks. So there's part of your answer, Mike. It's clearly known inside SAGE that they're not going to let elderly people out of their homes. And this is the note at the end of the document so that people know we're dealing in factual documents here. This paper was prepared by SAGE's Behavioural Science Subgroup, SBI-B, for discussion at SAGE 18 on the 23rd of March. Now, we've taken some damning excerpts out of this document, but it's real, and my goodness, this is so dangerous. So here's the government talking about persuasion, perceived threat. A substantial number of people do not feel sufficiently personally threatened. It could be that they're reassured with the low death rate in their demographic group, although levels of concern may be rising. And what does it go on to say there in bold? The perceived level of personal threat needs to be, quote, increased amongst those who are complacent. using hard-hitting emotional messaging. But look at what it is saying down here. Use the media to increase the sense of personal threat. Use the media to make people fearful. And why do you do that? Well, psychologists have been telling us all weekend, you do that because when people are fearful and stressed, it is easier to use applied behavioral psychology to get them to do what you want. So that was part of our report. I'm going to say we were bang on the money with what we were talking about. Let's welcome our guest today. Gary, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Gary, you've got 30 years experience, clinical, professional, managerial, of dealing with adult mental health. You're published in many adult mental health publications. You've basically spoken out against lockdown and talked about the dangers. How do you see this, the reporting of this latest meningitis outbreak, and what are your concerns, if you have any, about it?
Yeah, I have concerns because I can see the striking parallels between what we've been told over the last 2 weeks around meningitis and what actually happened back in 2020 with the COVID event. I was just thinking beforehand, there are several similarities, I think. One that stands out is the dress rehearsal, the practice in the months before the actual event. But back in the COVID era, we had Event 201, tabletop exercise carried out by the John Hopkins Centre along with the Gates Foundation and the WEF, the World Economic Forum, that simulated an outbreak of novel coronavirus. So this is guys getting together, role playing, and what would we do in such an event? That happened before the COVID event back in October 2019, and what we have now, much more recently, last September to November 2025, exercise Pegasus, where again a kind of rehearsal, a practice, a tabletop exercise based on a novel enterovirus from some fictional island. This exercise led by the Department of Health and Social Care and the UK Health Security Agency. And even in the exercise, it talks about, we're going to simulate a situation in which this virus, usually mild in its effects, but can lead to serious conditions such as meningitis. So that seems like a pretty prominent sort of idea that meningitis was on the minds of our public health experts at this time. As for other similarities, I think you've already touched on them. The fear-mongering, again, much smaller scale with meningitis, and probably is a dead end. It probably will fizzle out, fingers crossed. But there's still been that attempt to promote fear. Just some of the language that's been used around it. Unprecedented outbreaks, surging numbers of cases. And the media, in lockstep, put out these alarmist images. It's the misleading data again, like we saw during the COVID event. Back in the COVID era, we had the kind of death meter on the TV. Still, with albeit on a much smaller scale, we've got the meningitis fear-mongering, talking about 5 more cases. 2 people have died. As if this is really, really significant. Now, of course, any death is tragic, of course. But we do have to look at these things in context. And when you think that on average 1,600 people die every day in the UK, and the typical figure for meningitis over the last few decades has been around 50, 55 fatalities per year, meningitis isn't a major threat compared to other things that are going to shorten our life. So we've had the dress rehearsals, we've had the fear-mongering, few nudges. I'm sure most of your viewers will know what nudges are, but form of psychological manipulation which acts on the target without the target's awareness a lot of the time, so they don't know they're being influenced. So as well as the fear-mongering, other nudges we've had is like ego, which plays on the idea that human beings like to see themselves as virtuous, good, decent human beings. So what the psychologists do, or what the nudges do, the behavioral scientists do, is they equate following restrictions or following the guidance with being a good person. And we've seen elements of that with the meningitis outbreak, or play your part, keep everybody safe, go and get your jab. You know, all playing into this idea that if you don't follow that directive, you're somehow not a good individual. Similarly, another nudge we call normative pressure, to use the jargon term, which simply means that we tend to go with the crowd. We like to be in the majority, don't like to believe that we're in a small minority. So seeing large queues of people lining up to get the jab or to get their antibiotics and stuff gives the message that everybody else, the majority, are kind of being sensible and pursuing this way forward, which puts pressure on others to join them. And scarcity nudge, the last one I just mentioned, another kind of weapon in the behavioural scientists' toolbox. This idea, and I've heard it a few times with meningitis already, pharmacies are running short of antibiotics and running short of vaccines. Students queued for ages only to be disappointed because they've run out of the vaccine. That kind of thing. So it seems like, in summary, it's the same playbook as we saw during COVID, but thankfully it does sound, as you've said, Brian, that it might well fizzle out, and it seems they're drawing back a little bit now.
Gary, if I may just come back, thank you very much for taking us through these points. A question which I've always wanted to ask an NHS professional in psychology is, of course, if you're working in the NHS, you should be there in order to help people, particularly sick people. And here we see psychology being used in a malicious political sense. Has this caused any sort of backlash amongst qualified psychiatrists and clinical psychologists at all? Or are you just one voice amongst all those people?
I'm certainly not one voice, but definitely in the minority. And sadly, during the COVID event, the large majority of mental health professionals endorsed the dominant COVID narrative. There were a number of us. I'm not the only one by any means, and some of them braver than me, because at least I was retired in 2020. There were some other clinical psychologists who were speaking out against this, who were still working on the front line, which was a very brave thing to do back in the day.
Gary, thank you for that. Now, you're going to be joining us after the news for UK Column Extra, so we'll have a lot more time to talk. But just while you've got the broad audience of UK Column News, what advice can you give people to stay mentally strong and healthy when they're faced against very fearful, turbulent times?
Well, yes, there's a variety of things I think we can do, which collectively might make a difference. Switching off the mainstream media might be a key one. Finding our own tribes, like-minded individuals to spend time with, getting out in nature, getting away from the constant bombardment of nudges and scary messages. I think that was very basic things, really, Brian. But I think that's the thing to do, and to inform ourselves by reading more widely than just what's fed to us by the BBC, Sky News, etc.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that. Well, I certainly took the trouble in a really lovely sunny weekend to get out into the garden, do some work and to clear my head. And I'll just say that does work. And I think you were enjoying a little bit of Cornwall, Ben.
Indeed I was, yes.
Great. Gary, thank you very much for that. And as I say, thank you for joining us in UK Column Extra after today's news. So, Ben, where does that take us? While these things are occupying people's minds, cunning plans are being developed.
Certainly are. Cunning plans being developed. Thank you for that. That was fascinating to hear from an actual psychologist about what's been going on. And we talk a lot about the behavioural insights team and the use of applied psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, weapons-grade propaganda techniques against the British population. And I think
by its own government.
By its own government, funded by taxpayers. So we're paying to be propagandised and psychologically abused, basically, by our own government. It's a remarkable situation. Some of it's very subtle. I noticed the use of the word super spreader in your BBC piece there. That was a bit of a throwback to 5 or 6 years ago. And a lot of this is, as we've just heard, about nudging. So this is kind of subtle psychological manipulation, little pushes to get you to comply. But some of it is less subtle. And I always throw back to images like this from that period of time. This how would you describe it? Like they're turning the NHS into some kind of god-type figure, basically. That cannot
to be worshipped. Exactly,
to be worshipped, cannot be criticised, is beyond reproach. People that work within it are some kind of special class of hero that have to be held up, these key workers who are fighting this virus. And, this stuff going up all around the country is just one example here.
And I'll just say, I believe that image that we just had on screen, if it's possible to pop that one back, is based on US Marines raising the flag on Iwo Jima.
Absolutely, yes.
But this is a very emotive wartime image, which has now been transferred to the NHS.
Exactly, and the war against the virus. But was it really all about a virus, or was there something else going on in the background? Because there were many people in this society and further afield who were intent on using this as an opportunity to rethink, reshape, and reset our world. Let's have a little listen to the then Prince Charles.
We have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this crisis. Its unprecedented shockwaves may well make people more receptive to big visions of change. And global crises like pandemics and climate change know no borders and highlight just how interdependent we are as one people sharing one planet. Over the past month or so, despite the ongoing crisis, I've been encouraged to see the growing calls for a green recovery. We need only look to the United Nations Secretary General, to the IMF, the EU, the Petersburg Climate Dialogue, the Canadian government, the COP26 Universities Network, and business leaders around the world to see this. And as we move from rescue to recovery, therefore, we have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play. Everything I have tried to do and urge over the past 50 years has been done with our children and grandchildren in mind. So I can only encourage us all to think big and act now.
Doesn't mention the nation at all.
No, not once.
No, it's only on a global basis.
Well, of course.
The King speaks.
Yes, because this is about reinforcing the interconnectedness of all people. Forget the nations thing. It's all about humanity as one integrated global community, this being a golden opportunity. Think about it, Brian. We're going to shut down the whole world, and this is a golden opportunity for us to do something different. And introducing this idea of pandemics and also, importantly, climate change as global problems that require global solutions that have no borders, right? And I think that this is an absolutely crucial component part of what has been embedded to us through this process. And of course, he talks about the green recovery, and you'll note we talked about what was going on with the Commonwealth. In fact, the entire global technological transition is being presented as green, and the initiation point for that was COVID-19 and the Great Reset as launched by Prince Charles in November 2020. coming up for 6 years ago. And we're still living with it today. And a lot of this is predicated on the introduction of new technological systems and 24/7 surveillance, which only would have been able to come into existence because of COVID. Let's have a little listen to Yuval Noah Harari.
And COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, we need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin. What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. Mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition?
Omnipotent, omniscient.
Very, very dangerous.
Absolutely, yes.
Is describing.
Indeed it is, yeah. And essentially that is the apparatus for a biosecurity state.
Just ground our news today at this point, Ben, and I think as well. So while everybody at the moment is watching the horrors unfold in the Middle East with the war against Iran, we've got Ukraine, war and war and war. While people's minds are occupied with this change agenda is bringing in this new surveillance society.
Absolutely. And the technological infrastructure was initiated through COVID. Populations were forced essentially to accept this through COVID. He actually said there that these technologies had been rejected in democratic societies previously. Well, we'll just get rid of that, and this has to be brought in. It's an emergency, and this needs to be importantly built not just by the state but by international corporations who actually have the capabilities to do these things. So Palantir gets spoken about a lot. There was an excellent segment on the news on Friday. If people haven't seen it, I'd suggest going to look at the section about halfway through the show with Basil and Heiko Koo, who has just set up a protest outside of the Palantir office on Soho Square in central London, essentially seeking for the total removal of Palantir from the UK government. I think this is absolutely something we should be pushing towards. But Palantir was only introduced into UK government. The first contract, as I understand it, I'm pretty sure this is the case, that they signed with the UK government was with the NHS almost exactly 3 years ago. I think it was later on this week, not 3 years, sorry, 6 years ago, almost. It was in March 2020. And that was the introduction of Palantir into the NHS in order to build and run the COVID data hub, and working alongside a bunch of other big tech firms as well, which has put us into this position where essentially you have technology companies who are building data structures, which is essentially your information, our information. This is all integrated, available in the health system so that they can build computational models, projections about what they want the system to look like, how they want it to behave. And this is how they see us, ultimately, interconnected component parts of a complex system that can be manipulated, tracked, traced, analysed, where workflows can be adapted in real time so that people on the ground in the health service can have their behaviour changed by someone at a computer terminal. And then this all integrates into a much broader technological ecosystem of technology companies, and a paradigm where we're being managed by unelected bureaucrats and the adherence to completely fabricated targets like my favourite from that time. Do you remember the R number?
Indeed.
Yeah.
I nearly had a clip of that for the news.
Oh, I've got one now. I've got it coming up, Brian. Let's have a little listen to this.
The R number, also called R0, tells us how many people someone with coronavirus will go on to infect. If the reproductive number is 2, then one person will probably make 2 others sick. If it's 3, then it'll be around 3. Without a cure or a vaccine, this R number guides every decision governments make to fight the pandemic. Before changes were brought in to reduce the spread of COVID-19, its R number was between 2 and 3, and that's why it spread so quickly. The aim is for it to be less than 1 and keep it there so health services can cope. But when R0 is less than 1, we can't just immediately switch back to how things used to be. That's because each restriction that's lifted makes the R number rise, some more than others, and it's not clear how much. Also, how restrictions are lifted exactly, that can affect the R number too. Governments need to carefully balance the need to get countries and economies moving again while still keeping the public safe.
Are they being honest?
Are they being honest?
So the emphasis on the R. Sorry.
That's a very good question, Brian. Yes. No, the short answer to which is I don't think so. I mean, and those types of numbers are wide open to manipulation, not least because the R number itself was based on all of the testing that was coming out of the health system that we know was at best inaccurate, at worst probably fraudulent, to be honest with you, a lot of it. But this is the world that we've been ushered into. Governance based on adherence to statistics coming out of technology platforms
and the government
and the government, absolutely. Who will point to something like the R number and say, oh well, it's not really my decision. It's coming down because of the data and appeals to science and all that kind of thing. So this is the paradigm that we've moved into. You probably haven't heard about the R number for quite some time because they stopped tracking it because we got the vaccine and what have you. It wasn't just about, importantly, centralising control and centralising the administrative capacity of the state in order to exert an influence over every part of our lives. That was a big part of what was happening with these new technologies and artificial intelligence and that kind of thing. But also it ran deeper than that. And I've got another clip here of Yuval Harari talking about the new paradigm of genomic medicine and genetic sequencing that was ushered in at the same time.
Humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life.
We're new gods.
Re-engineering life.
Exactly. It's what these people think they're doing. And that a lot of that is centred around this organisation, which is part of the NHS, Genomics England. It's centre of an ecosystem. A biotechnological industry is what they describe it, where the human genetic code is the raw material. Genomics England are at the forefront of this, but they're part of a much wider network of linked companies and government assets, and there is an enormous risk to this. First of all, we don't want people genetically engineering us if we can avoid it, but also because this data is extremely sensitive and it's already going missing all across the internet. So just last week, this example popped up of UK Biobank, which is a research database operating out of the UK within the NHS system, has been inadvertently publishing huge amounts of extraordinarily sensitive patient data onto GitHub, just going up onto the internet. And in fact, there were just in the second half of last year, 80 separate incidents where UK Biobank was having to reach out to GitHub to ask them to remove sensitive information that, according to this Guardian article, was actually with a couple of the integration with a couple of other data points was extremely easy to work out who these individuals were. And it had all of their genetic codes, their medical history, all the interactions they'd had with the health service over an extended period of time. And this stuff's just lying around on the internet. And maybe we expect this from the government, but the thing about UK Biobank is that it was actually joint backed between the government and Amazon Web Services, and Eric Schmidt, interestingly, from former CEO of Google, also a steering committee member at the Bilderberg meetings, who co-funded this. And you would expect people like that to have a better track record when it comes to data security, but apparently not. Apparently they're just not interested in it. it's not a priority for them as far as I can tell. So anyway, not much to be proud of here in terms of the national response to the COVID scenario, although there was one person who was very proud. Let's have a little listen to Matt Hancock.
You're quite emotional by that.
Well, it's just, it's been such a tough year for so many people. And there's William Shakespeare putting it so simply for everybody that, we can get on with our lives. And there's still a few months to go. I've still got this worry that we can't blow it now, Piers. We've still got to get the vaccine to millions of people. And so we've got to keep sticking by the rules. But it's just, there's so much work gone into this, and I'm really, really, it makes you proud to be British.
So ruddy proud.
It's truly horrible to see it after all this time with a hindsight of what actually went on. Despicable man.
Absolutely, despicable man.
The rest of the comment for UK Column Extra.
Yeah, let's do that. But I will just close up by pointing out that what he was proud of delivered these outcomes. So this is the MHRA yellow card reporting scheme. You can see at least 1.6 million adverse reactions, at least 2,500 deaths. Those numbers are probably underreported by a factor of 10 to potentially even 100 times. So this is absolute death and destruction coming out of the health system itself. And then one chart, which I got from Heart Group back in 2023, I think this was, basically showing excess deaths from 2020 at the top down to 2023 at the bottom, from 0 years old on the left up to 85 plus on the right-hand side. And essentially what you're looking at is concentrations of excess deaths. Red is bad, green is good, black is the worst. And the way I track this is midazolam vaccines and booster shots coming in. And I think this is what Matt Hancock's legacy is and what he has to be proud of.
Oh, yes, okay. Let's leave that there. Let's get on to some good news. A huge thank you, as always, to everybody who supports the UK column. We can only do what we do with your financial help. So whether you're a member or donate or purchase through the shop, this is what keeps us going. And with our 20th anniversary year this year, we are very keen to expand. So if you're watching and you're not a member of the community, then click the little button and support our work, and that would be much appreciated. Now, we've got more content coming up tonight. Germ warfare, symbolism. He'll be talking about symbolism in the Harry Potter world. Let's just have a look at this little clip.
You have Harry, who he starts off in the story. He's 11 years old. And he finds out that a wizard killed his parents, Lord Voldemort.
Wizards can either turn into or produce as a Patronus, which is a light form for their protection. And he has the Patronus of a stag. So the Weasley family is a symbol of different heart qualities. So he symbolizes the heart and staying true to who you are in your heart.
You have Dumbledore, who's the wise and kind headmaster.
His Patronus is a phoenix, and a phoenix is a symbol for the consciousness beyond time and space. So the unity consciousness. So
each character corresponds to a certain aspect of spirituality. Ultimately, it's about the fall of human consciousness to the ego.
I think that's going to be a very interesting discussion. Remember, of course, Harry Potter pushed out to get into the minds of as many young children as possible. A lot of parents pushing out Harry Potter films and stories without really understanding the darkness that's behind it. I shall be interested to join Germ in that discussion. Now, tonight at 9 p.m, We've also got Silk and Steel. And this is Carl Jar having a look at why Trump's Iran war is America's 21st century Vietnam and worse, and possibly worse. And that's with Ina Tangen, Senior Fellow at the CIGI. So do join that one. And I'd also like to remind people that tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we've got Diane's interview with Bonnie Wallace, fighting the spiritual battle for children's innocence. And this is going to be another very important discussion because, of course, it's clear that government absolutely wants to target the minds of children, as do many of the globalist bodies and non-government organisations that you speak about, Ben. Well, we've also got something else coming up, which is this is a picture paints, which is Jake, who's been doing great work. I have been in the dentist chair with Jake. This is a little taster clip because this will be coming out very soon. Let's just have a look.
We have a very special treat this week on 1,000 Words when we sit down with the man himself, Brian Gerrish.
And then the thing where it started to get very interesting, and last year, for the first time ever, I decided to talk publicly about it, was when I started to experience information being given to me, which then led to me having an interaction with an amazing lady in Cornwall. You need to be careful, Brian, because you're poking a stick into some pretty heavy stuff.
Here is extraordinary story. Join the chat live Sunday, 7 p.m.
So that's 7 p.m. Sunday, the 28th of March, and you can get a taste for what it's like to be in that chair. Now, where does that take us to? Diane, welcome to today's news. You've been staying alongside the Fornethy ladies up in Scotland. The appeal's just been taken place over the sentencing of the elderly member of staff. That appeal's been turned down, and the women are in a tough place. What have you got for us?
Yes, thanks, Brian, and hello, everyone. It's great to be here today. Unfortunately, I have to update the audience who has maybe been following the Fornethy case along with UK Column, and we've been with these women for, I guess, going on 3 years now. As you can see, the interviews that we conducted back in December, where the women discussed with Brian and I that there were 18 out of 25 guilty verdicts for Patricia Robertson or Baxter, who was the one surviving teacher from Fornethy Residential School, who they were able to find and prosecute, which was good news at first for the women, when they thought, okay, we'll finally get some justice for the abuse that we suffered at Fornethy Residential School over a period of over 30 years up in rural Scotland. However, what happened after this was not the best. Basically the sentencing, which I attended one day of the trial with the witnesses testifying, as well as the sentencing day, the judge who gave the sentence to Patricia Robertson first really condemned her for the horrible things that she did. He accused her of what he called cruel and unnatural treatment, not going so far as to call it child abuse or sexual abuse, the more serious charges. So she was found guilty of 18 of 25 charges. The other 7 were not proven according to Scottish law. And the sentencing was basically she got probation for supervision for 3 years, and she was ordered to pay compensation of £1,000 each to each survivor of the 18 that received the charge of guilty. And she was not allowed to leave her house for 12 months between 3 p.m. and midnight. I remember this is a 77-year-old woman. So following that sentencing, of course, the women were very angry, which we covered on UK Column on the long interviews that we had back in December, which aired earlier this year. Please take a look at those. It is quite long, but very insightful in terms of listening to the women, as well as the reflective conversation that Brian and I had as a result of all of this work. So now if we go into the mainstream media coverage of what happened last week, which is, as Brian said, the appeal that has been withdrawn. We don't really know why. STV reported that basically the spokesperson, and we don't have any official evidence from this yet that we have been able to find from the Crown, but a spokesperson from the Crown Office said, quote, following careful consideration by specialist lawyers, the Crown has decided to withdraw the unduly lenient sentence appeal that was previously lodged. We have spoken to those involved about the decision and will make ourselves available to answer any further questions they have. Now, I want to go into the conversations that I had with some of the survivors who have been speaking with us over the last few days. Last Thursday on UK Column, we had an interview that aired with Brian and Carol White, who was one of our abuse survivors. So Carol was one of the women I caught up with over the weekend, asking her what she thought about this withdrawal of the appeal. So here's a short clip from the interview that I had with Carol.
Well, it's quite disappointing knowing that she's not going to prison. The initial disappointment came from the sentencing, but when we thought that it was going to go for an appeal, you thought there was going to be a second chance of her being sentenced, and now it's happened again. It's just been another disappointment.
So we had a long discussion, and hopefully these will be available on UK Column at a later date so that we can hear the full extent of what she shared. She had a very powerful interview, of course, with you, Brian, last week, talking about the story of social services taking away 2 of her 5 children for several years. So we can go on from here to look at some of the other Fornethy survivors who have been working with us. The women sent me this over the weekend. This is the Daily Record, a Scottish mainstream newspaper featuring Sharon Cruden, with the word devastated in large letters at the top of the article, as we can see there on screen. Hopefully people can see that, the quality of the photos the best we could get. To quote what one of the things that Sharon said to the Daily Record is, quote, "I'm devastated and disgusted that the Crown Office has abandoned this appeal. She was found guilty of 18 charges against children in her care, yet will never see a prison cell. It's a slap in the face for survivors of Fornethy," and it certainly is. Margaret, who was another one of the women who has been interviewed by us in the past and is on that long interview that I mentioned from January, she said, quote, "She got away with this lightly, obviously. What does this say about the justice system? Looks like they are protecting the perpetrators and not the victims because of her age. They went on a past case. It should have been focused on this individual case. This doesn't encourage historical abuse victims to come forward in the future. I am absolutely gutted." So I have here a video clip of when I got together with a few of the other Fornethy survivors yesterday for another longer conversation. And this is just a short clip that I would like to discuss. This features the women that have been on with us previously. This is with Lynn Sheeran, Annie Gray, Kelly Fox, and Jean Perney with me in conversation.
See how and under what jurisdiction that they can pull that appeal. Again, why? I mean, what's the reason for it? Because we haven't been told nothing.
Nothing, no.
What they're telling us
left
in the newspaper, they're reporting in the paper, they're reporting on SCV News, they're reporting in every other newspaper media that we have all been told. Why?
Nothing.
Was pulled. We know nothing. You know what I mean? The same as, I mean, we don't know what we're going to get for Christmas this year. It's the exact same with this. We don't know why that appeal was pulled out.
Yep.
We want to know. Because it's not done.
I think you'll get a right to know.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. It's the whole thing is just one big cover up, but we're going to uncover it.
And the other thing I've heard through Sharon Cruden, who is another lady, of course, I've been working with, who's not here on the call, that nobody has received the ridiculous £1,000 that you're supposed to get as compensation. That nobody's even heard anything about it, which again, you know, what does it mean in terms of the sentencing if she's not even being required to pay? And I think they gave her a limited amount of time to pay it, didn't she? It was like
3 months.
3 months.
So,
yeah.
Must be nearly by now.
Yeah, what we saw was she's either no paid it, refusing to pay it, or she's asked for more time, which means she can pay installments and she can pay like only a fraction of her benefits every week or every month whenever she gets them. So she could basically say to them, "Oh, I can only give you £180 a month, £10 a month per person."
Sorry for butting in, but that was took off her savings.
Sorry?
So that, sure, at the court, that's what her savings were.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
they were coming out, that money was coming out of savings. It wasn't coming out of a benefit. That was supposed to be coming out of her savings, and she had 3 months to pay it.
And it's still not
but
done.
It might get, somebody had said to me, I don't know who it was, that it might have been kind of put back a bit because obviously they were appealing it.
Everything was suspended because of the appeal.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing here, of course, is, as they said, the £1,000 compensation that was due to each of the 18 survivors is not being paid yet, despite having sort of passed that time limit now. We see that they were told nothing about this decision to withdraw the appeal for still unknown reasons, despite the mainstream media reporting everywhere that they were supposed to have been told already, but they already didn't know until they saw it in the news. And this has all been a result of the delaying of the appeal. And now the appeal has been withdrawn. So the women have absolutely no idea at all whatsoever where things are going to go from here. So just a couple of other quotes to close the segment up, Brian. So here's some more women that we have talked with in the past. This is Rona Hargan, who said, quote, "I'm disgusted with the appeal being withdrawn. People will think it's a waste of time because they just get away with it. I've lost faith in the justice system." And Carol Robertson, who's been with us in the past, said, "Not shocked, as the whole system is corrupt." So what we've seen here is a lot of ups and downs for these women. They've worked so hard over the years, been through a lot, reliving the trauma, fighting everything they can, thinking they will fight the system, and are continuing to do so. But they are starting to see, as a result of all this, that the mainstream media is working against them, that the system is corrupt, that the courts are doing what they can to promote this massive cover-up. And of course, this was systemic abuse. This was not just the one teacher. This was something that happened over the period of 30 years under the establishment, and the women are starting to see that. And while they're obviously very angry for very good reasons, I also think that one of the things is that they will continue to fight and fight harder. So just to close this as well, to direct the audience to all of our reporting that we've been doing for the past few years on Fornethy Residential School, we do have a separate page for this on our UK Column website, and the link to that will be in the show notes. Thanks, Brian.
Diane, thank you very much for that. And of course, we say to the audience that we've been working with the Fornethy ladies now for years, and we're going to stay supporting them in their journey past this appeal. I think there's a lot more fight in them, and it's going to be interesting to see what comes. Now, let's just reflect. Fornethy, over the 30-odd years it was running, roughly 2,000, maybe more girls a year going through. So we're talking about potentially thousands and thousands of little girls damaged from abuse in Scotland. But it's clear the Scottish state doesn't want to pick up on that. We've got Epstein with the abuse of children, young girls, young women, and that is being pushed into the long graphs under the events, particularly with the war against Iran. So this is another very high-level cover-up. It appears every direction we turn, Ben, the state does not want to get near the subject of the abuse of children unless it's to stamp grooming gangs on it, in which case they're very happy to broadcast that worldwide.
Indeed, yes, and it's historical. So as you were talking about things that happened 30 plus years ago, but it's going on right now. Another inexplicable sentence being handed down last week to the former Labour councillor Liron Velleman, who was caught up in a sting operation, sending inappropriate images to what he thought was a 13-year-old girl, but actually he was sending them to an undercover police officer. This is of particular interest to us here at UK Column because Mr. Velleman, as well as being a former Labour councillor, is also, or was, an employee at Hope Not Hate. That lovely charitable organisation that
like the UK Column.
Doesn't like the UK Column, calls us Nazis constantly. He was also involved in writing the Online Safety Act, which is supposed to be about protecting children online. So it seems there's a slight conflict of interest there. Interestingly, this chap, the ragged-trousered philanderer, on X, went to challenge Velleman in the pub after the sentence, the suspended sentence was handed down. So obviously he wasn't taken to prison as he probably should have been. He was in the pub having a drink with his parents, and that doesn't really seem like justice, does it? But this is the world we're living in right now.
Seems to be par for the course. Thank you for that, Ben. Now, we're to finish the news today with just having another look, really, at the chaos and mayhem which is unfolding around us. And this is served with a large dose of propaganda. We need to see through this. We need to stay calm in order to deal with what's being thrown at us. But if we have a look at some of the headlines, we've got a lot on the war. Trump raises stakes in the war with Iran. Iran vows to target water sites if the US hits power plants. So Iran is definitely not done for, as Trump would have us believe. Then we've got this sort of headline: Britain is safe from Iran's long-range missiles. So says the minister. We've got this one: why did the PM keep the public in the dark for 30 hours after the Chagos strike? This is where Iran launched a couple of ballistic missiles. So a lot being said here in the media. What is the undertone of this? Well, it's war, chaos, confusion, and particularly fear, because if we're fearful, we can be controlled. But the headlines today go on. So we've got fear over fuel prices. We've got, we'll send the price of oil soaring, vows Iran. So oil shortage is being pushed across as an imminent, real threat for the nation, and we should be very concerned about that. And then, of course, on the top of that, we've got the request here, which I've labelled Save Us. So this is the union saying that the government and big business and the trades union themselves should come together in a COVID-style operation in order to save everybody from the mayhem which the state says has been unleashed. It goes on because we've got a different style here, because under US and Iran ramping up the threats, we're back on the subject of rubber boats and migrants. Remember that the people coming in boats are a very, very small proportion of the number of people coming through permitted migration, but we're told to be fearful of the people in the boats. This is all about creating division. And then, of course, in relation to migrants, we've got this sort of headline, which is all designed to bring in the fear. This is a propaganda operation. It's an attack against the population in this country. And we've mentioned Fornethy and the abuse of children. The Mirror, the only newspaper covering anything to do with Epstein, and you'll see that basically the message is the only thing worth talking about in relation to Epstein is Andrew. Epstein, therefore, equals Andy, and that's moving into the long grass. The Sun was on something different because this was talking about the death of Huntley in prison. I've labelled it cold, callous humanity, because if we think about this, whatever crime an individual carries out once they go into prison, they are under the protection of wider society and the state. And of course, he was failed in prison, but he's treated as if he's a piece of meat, even though, of course, he had committed heinous crimes. So think about the message that these newspapers are putting across. Nothing about love and compassion. This is about hating your fellow human being. And in that hate and division, these globalist plans can come in, as you've been describing. The last one is simply mind-numbing dross. So the Star, tend it like Beckham. This is complete rubbish. The only thing you should be using this paper for is to light the fire. They'll be putting a stop to that soon. Let's come back to the headline on power plea to stop job crisis. I singled this one out because this is more or less the clamour for the government to save us. But look at the language being used. Union leaders are demanding a government task force is set up to protect Britain from the effects of America's war against Iran. The TUC says it should join employers and Whitehall officials to work on contingency plans as energy prices rise again. There's the underlying fear factor. And it goes on to say the national, urgent and collaborative approach would show that the country has learned the lessons of the COVID pandemic, Ben. And finally, let's bring that in. When government, industry and unions work together on furlough schemes, workplace health and public service planning. So COVID was a great thing, and the unions here saying under the banner of the fear and the mayhem over the war against Iran, we should bring the same things in. Let's have another look at a historic clip from UK Column where we were warning about the manoeuvring of deep state policy under the fear factor banner. Now let's jump back to last Monday when UK Column had an exclusive. Whistleblower at pretty high level in Westminster had told us that the whole thing about lockdown is that the government did not want to release lockdown because whilst the population are locked up, it gave the government the opportunity to repurpose government. So it was an extraordinary, lockdown was seen as an extraordinary opportunity not to reopen 50 to 60% of what each company does. And then it said, so why reopen schools, care homes, coal-fired power stations? Don't reopen any of them. They are garbage. They're yesterday's technology. They're polluting. They're toxic. They're badly organised. You don't reopen them. And the individual went on to say that if huge amounts of money was to be brought to bear, £240 billion, increasing debt by 7 times, it was pointless reopening all the old stuff. Now was the time to, quote, reinvent society. So it was true in 2020, it's been true since, it's true today in 2026, under the froth of the fear and the pressure and the confusion and the chaos, we are seeing the implementation of globalist policies to change UK. So if you can't understand what you see happening around you, or the policies coming out of whether it's Conservatives or Labour, the government or the civil service, try thinking in terms that we are being attacked by our own government. We'll leave that segment there. You're going to take us into a close.
I'm going to warm the hearts at the end here, yes, because as fear and division and societal breakdown is the message coming from on high, there are actually amazing stories of people really loving and getting along with each other all over the place. And in particular this week, there's a big march coming up on Saturday in London, with the underlying theme essentially being that British people, English people who are inherently racist, can't be trusted, need to be managed by the government. And frankly, it's not true. We can all get along. And I just love this video about Ian Wright, the former Premiership footballer, and Mr. Pigden. Let's have a little watch.
Ian's still the highest scoring striker ever to play for Arsenal, and he owes a lot to the man who first taught him to kick a ball, his old school teacher, Sid Pigden.
As I haven't seen him for, 23, 24 years, and so he would now be expecting me to be 6 feet under, I would think. I don't actually think, he probably won't recognise me because he won't believe it's me. Hello, Ian. Long time no see.
Mr. Pigden, you're alive.
I'm alive, he says. How are you doing?
I can't believe it. Someone said you was dead.
As you see, I'm very much in, and I'm so glad you've done so well with yourself.
He was so supportive all the time. He kind of like had me as his kind of like special guy. I don't know what to say. God, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You know, now I realise how important he was in my life. The first main imposing figure, male figure in my life who was trying to guide me on the right road.
How far are we going back now? 40 years, 30 years anyway?
Easy, 32 years.
Yeah.
So if we're left alone, we can get on. I think that's
we can get on.
True message. If the government would stop attacking us, we could probably do extremely well with all the people living in this country at the moment.
Yes, exactly. I love that little snapshot of England. Anytime anyone says that white people or the English, wherever it might be, are inherently racist, show them that clip, because it's just not true. And also, we hear a lot of talk about toxic masculinity. That was just masculinity. Yeah, that was wonderful, and I particularly like that clip because it reminds me of my granddad. Mr. Pigden reminds me of my granddad, just an old-fashioned fella, London fella. And actually, today it's 4 years to the day from when he left us at the age of 100.
That's pretty good going.
He's good going. He got his telegram from the Queen, and then he popped his clogs within weeks. And so there he is on the right hand side, and we couldn't go and see him because of COVID, because of all the travel restrictions.
Yeah,
because we weren't jabbed, so we weren't able to go and see him, and it was just the worst thing for me actually about that whole period of time was not being able to see my granddad. But my uncle, bless him, did manage to get over there and sent us lots of photos like this, and we had lots of lovely calls and chats with him. And I'll just show you a couple more pictures quickly because I've got your attention now. That's Leonard. He's an old soldier. He was a desert rat in northern Africa under Montgomery, and he joined the army when he was 16. There he is. He always had a smile on his face.
Yeah, brilliant memory.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant
so
memories.
God bless you, Grandad. And it's a shame we didn't get to see you, but those were the times we were living in. Hopefully they don't come back again.
Indeed. There we are. We must close UK column news. Thank you to everybody who's watching us, whether you're in UK or overseas. And as I say, if you're not a member of UK column, get on the website and join us and give us the strength to not only survive from 2026 onwards, but to grow. We will have a UK column extra for our members a few minutes after the close of the news. So if you're a member, join us then. And our guest, Gary Sidley, will be joining us, and we'll be talking more about the government, its propaganda and the fear campaign against the British public. But that's the close of today's UK column news. We will be back at the same time, 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Join us then. See you. Bye-bye.